how can Alan Moore make a story with all the Victorian literature characters and then all of a sudden make a movie about it, and the movie sucked pretty bad, all because of Sean Connery? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Multi-Voice Entertainment. I am the Multi-Voice Reviewer. I have many voices, but one opinion. And today, I'm going to talk to you about a certain unique comic book writer and artist. And unlike other comic book writers, he is like the Orson Welles of comics, because his stories are out there. But let's start with Alan Moore. Now, Alan Moore, he did a lot of really great works, and one thing I heard about him is that he is British. He has a unique way of his art, of his stories and comics, and also that he likes old-fashioned Victorian stories, and he's kind of a rebel anarchist in a way, because he kind of hates how the British establishment's been acting, and the same thing goes with America. And also, he's not exactly a religious man. He's a kind of guy who worships a Greek puppet like Snake. But besides all that, this is Alan Moore's work that he done. And to my opinion, don't watch any of the animated movies or Hollywood movies based from it, because one thing you should know about Alan Moore is he hated what Hollywood did to his work. So that's why every time if they do a movie or a TV show based on his work, he wants to make sure that his name is not on the credits, because he is so pissed at what Hollywood done. And to tell you the truth, I don't blame him. And of course, he also met another comic book writer, and of course, a comic book writer who goes by the name of Melinda Gebbie. And of course, she wrote a literature crossover comic series, which is kind of pornographic in a lesbian kind of way, called Lost Girls. On that one, it's a crossover story of Alice from Alice in Wonderland, Dorothy Gale from Wizard of Oz, my personal favorite story, and Wendy Darling from Peter Pan. And they all are middle-aged, and they're living in a big house, and they start exploring their sexuality. And after and with the help of Alan Moore having that comic book published, they both got married. But the reason why I'm telling you this, because I'm going to tell you about another story it gave him inspiration to take all the literature characters together and let them all cross over, is of course his brilliant work that I have in my hand right here, Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Now, how it starts out is, in the story, somebody who goes by the name of M decided to create a league who would stop a greater threat. And all of a sudden, one of his members, who goes by the name of Captain Bond, who is also the grandfather of Bond, James Bond. Now, I know how some of you are saying, how come I never review any James Bond movies? It's because I'm not a big fan of James Bond. I mean, when I was a little kid, I used to watch that cartoon series called James Bond Jr., but I was never into the James Bond movies, because I really don't really care about spy dramas. I prefer spy comedies, like Austin Powers or Robert English, But if somebody wants me to play James Bond, I like to give my performance of Sean Connery playing Bond, James Bond. But of course, to my opinion, if you ever read the books of James Bond, one person I think is very, very accurate to James Bond is, of course, Sterling Archer. Hear me out. In the book, James Bond is selfish, self-centered, alcoholic, and a womanizer, and Sterling Archer fit the bill. I mean, he's not a parody. He is a complete adaptation of James Bond. Imagine Sterling Archer playing James Bond. Hi there, I'm Bond. James Bond. Hey, Lana! What? Danger zone! I'm sorry, I enjoy Archer, so... But anyway, back to the story. Captain Bond, he started recruiting one who's going to be the leader and also be the only woman in the team. Of course, it is Mina Mori. And a little known fact, did you know that Alan Moore didn't think about Mina Mori in the first place? In the first place, he wanted Irene Adler. But the problem is, not many people don't know who Irene Adler is because not many people couldn't catch up to the Sherlock Holmes stories enough to know during that time. So therefore, everybody knows Mina, but nobody knows Irene Adler. And then all of a sudden, she went to an Arab country and into an opium den where there she meets an old man version of the Great White Hunter and Explorer, who is also an inspiration for Indiana Jones and Lara Croft and Nathan Drake. And it is Alan Quatermain. But of course, one thing I gotta say, that I wouldn't recommend this comic book for kids because there's a lot of sex scenes and also attempted rape scenes in this, and some nudity. So I wouldn't recommend kids to read the comic. So if you find this comic, for the love of God, don't show it to kids. Because in the scene where Mina found Alan Quatermain, he's all hyped up on the opium, telling her to leave me alone, and then a group of Arabs trying to take an advantage of Mina. So Alan killed them. And as they were trying to make a run for it, out comes the Nautilus. And who runs the Nautilus? The famous underwater sea explorer, Captain himself, Captain Nemo. Now, after Mina and Alan Quatermain and Captain Nemo, they wanted to get another member in their group, so they went to the Rue Morgue, where they meet C. August Dibbit. And they say that there was a monkey-like monster who is killing people in the Rue Morgue, besides a orangutan from the original story, Murdered in Rue Morgue. But it turns out so Mina disguised herself as a prostitute to find out who this monkey creature is, because he keeps killing prostitutes. And much of their surprise, they come across Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now, of course, one thing I have to say, the difference between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I mean, in the books, Mr. Hyde is supposed to be a sinister-looking man in the original story. But in Alan Moore's rendition, he made Mr. Hyde look like a monkey, like a human gorilla. Dang. Oh yeah, and one thing I wanted to show you guys is, of course, Captain Nemo's ship called the Nautilus, which in turn, the Nautilus stands for the Sword of the Ocean. And from the looks of it, I gotta say, it looks really badass. It's like a squid attacking a whale. One thing I forgot to mention, Nemo has Ishmael as his first officer, just like in the movie and the comics. Neat design. A lot better than the movie, which I'm going to tell you guys in a minute. Anyway, in the story, throughout the whole adventure, they went to an all-girls school because there's a lot of reports of all the girls in that school are getting attacked by some ghosts haunting the all-girls school. And then all of a sudden, this one girl starts getting attacked by something that is invisible, which it turns out it is Holly Griffin, aka the Invisible Man. The Invisible Man, huh? And throughout the whole story, they went, now the whole league is set. Alan Quartermain, Mina, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Captain Nemo, and the Invisible Man, they formed the League. Which, that's them there. And if there's other characters you think I should mention, I'll talk about it in the movie. But anyway, one thing that kind of surprised me the most is they went to China and they start noticing that there is a rival gang there is like a Chinese gang that is starting to create some problems from England. And much of their surprise, the Chinese gang is run. Now, don't take it offensively. This is Alan Moore here. Alan Moore wrote this. So if I mention a name, don't get offended because it's in the damn comic. But believe it or not, the Chinese gang is overrun by Fu Manchu. And what they have is they have this flying device created by that one literate character, came from one of the books called From Earth to the Moon. A first science fiction story that involves a scientist who went to the moon. And then when Campion Bond went to see M, the Invisible Man was disguising himself as one of the Bobbies, and he was following them. And it turns out that he discovered that M was none other than Professor James Moriarty. That's right. Sherlock Holmes' rival, arch nemesis, the Napoleon of crime himself, Professor Moriarty. And now there is this huge gang war between the Chinese gang and the British gang, since Moriarty runs MI6, which that's exactly what the government is. It's British intelligence, so... So the League themselves, Moriarty got the floating device and they're planning to go into space. So the League itself is trying to stop the Chinese and the English gangs for killing each other. So they're going into Moriarty's ship. And much of their surprise, they finally made it into Moriarty's ship. And when Mina was running towards Moriarty, I mean, you know how Victorian men's are. They always had to be so damn sexist. But anyway, I mean, he just calls her a stinky little lesbian. Until Alan Quartermain told her to duck, and he fired his gun at Moriarty's henchman, but Moriarty shot him in the arm, and he's about ready for a bullet in his head, but Mina grabs a huge spanner, smashes the glass, and the floating device, it was ready to take off. So Moriarty ran to that floating device and went all the way up, 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 until he's frozen in space. And that was like the end of their mission, and that was the end of Moriarty in the story. And that's how it originally ended in this comic. And of course, since Moriarty is no longer M, MI6 replaced Moriarty with Mycroft Holmes. Another Sherlock Holmes character involved. And now let's get to the movie that the comic book is based on. Now, one thing I have to say, there's a lot of Easter eggs in this comic. I mean, there's a lot of things in this comic that is like Easter eggs to all the Victorian literatures, but I would show it to you, but it would take me all day, so I'm just going to the facts and the characters in the book. But anyway, I'm going to tell you about the movie that forced Alan Moore to not be credited on any movie based from his comic, and of course it forces Sean Connery to retire because the movie failed. I guess he should have taken the role as Gandalf the Grey. He would have been pretty good playing Gandalf than playing Alan Quartermain in the movie. And of course made the director quit because he had a huge fight with Connery during filming. I mean, it's kind of hard to... I mean, Sean Connery had a part to play Gandalf the Grey in Lord of the Rings, and he's like, "No way, I ain't playing Lord of the Rings. I'll be doing League of Extraordinary Gentlemen while I play Alan Quartermain." And of course the movie itself has a lot of spy reference, of course. I guess that's why Sean Connery took the part, because he just likes things involving spies and such. It's like he wants to go back to his James Bond years. But one thing that kind of bothered me is, instead of the whole gang and Fu Manchu involved, they have a character which they called him the Phantom. Very, very operatic. Oh yeah, that's right, I do have a comic book of Phantom of the Opera. Stay tuned, folks, because I'm going to review this in Halloween. I haven't talked much about the Phantom of the Opera, except during that top 10 classic monsters, but this time I'm going to delve into the Phantom of the Opera on Halloween. So stay tuned. But anyway, another character that they added in the movie that was never in the comic book is, of course, Dorian Gray. Although Dorian Gray does have an appearance in the comic, but it's right on the cover, and it's his portrait. The portrait of Dorian Gray is in the cover. And of course, there's another character in the movie, another one, who has belonged to a certain literature, but it's not Victorian, but an American literature, and that is Tom Sawyer. And there was a deleted scene why Tom Sawyer decided to join the League. He said that the Phantom killed his partner, which it turns out it was Huckleberry Finn. So the bad guy in the movie killed his friend Huckleberry Finn? And that's why Tom Sawyer. And the reason why they added Tom Sawyer to it, because they wanted to have an American literature character to be with a group of Victorian literature characters. I mean, it's kind of different to compare between the comic book and the movie. And of course, it kind of surprised that the Phantom turned out to be Moriarty. And one thing I heard about that they were kind of based in the comic book, they were planning to make a sequel based from Volume 2 of the comics, which is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen 2, Mars Attacks. In the comic book, I'm going to tell you briefly about the sequel. In the sequel, they briefly going to show John Carter of Mars noticing about the Martians from War of the World, and of course, they go into an island where they see a lot of animal people, even ones from The Wind in the Willows, and they come across Dr. Moreau, the mad scientist who turns animals into humans by splicing their genes. Well, that is my review for the day. So, my final thoughts. The comic book is way better than the movie. The movie was okay. I mean, it was pretty cool the first time I saw it, but as I started paying attention to the comic and the movie, well, the comic had a lot more into it and a lot more literature characters involved. And the movie, I mean, even though it failed in the box office, it's still entertaining nonetheless. So some of you who are League of Extraordinary Gentlemen fans, please read the comic book. And now I hear a rumor that they're going to do a TV series of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Well, I hope they're going to make it more faithful to the comic than what they did in the movie. And that is my thoughts about that. So this is my review for the day. For those of you who likes this review, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe for more. And I'm the multi-voice reviewer. I remember it so I can jog your memory.